So let me ask you this. In terms of what's going to happen at the DNC, the demands are not going to be met. There's going to be frustration on the part of some of the delegates and certainly of these protesters. Are they going to create a significant disruption either inside or outside the DNC?
Let's disaggregate this for a minute. There are demonstrators, and they are angry, and they have a right to be. 40,000 dead, a genocide unfolding. There's at this point mass starvation, people dying actually from hunger, and there's now a spread of infectious diseases, and 80% of the houses have been destroyed. I mean, this has been god-awful.
And Hamas still isn't releasing those hostages, huh?
And honestly, and Israel has now increased the number of prisoners that they're holding without charges to 10,000. There's 10,000 people being held without charges, and the Israeli press has been reporting the grotesque torture and rape of these prisoners.
So
Look,
let's come.
This is a problem.
No. We're going to come back. I understand you want to go on a diatribe against Israel. I get it. And that's what they're going to do outside the DNC. But here, we're going to try and have a discussion about the DNC and what's happening in Chicago. No, wait. Either we can do this or we don't do it. We can have a discussion. All I'm asking you is what's going to happen at the DNC. I understand you think it's justified.
And I'm trying to disaggregate the groups. Outside, there may be demonstrations. Inside, the uncommitted people have taken a very responsible approach to their concerns with the DNC about things that need to be done. If they're going to invite hostage families or families of hostages to speak from the main stage, if they're going to do that, then there's a concern that the New York Times reported that there's a concern that Palestinian Americans who've lost loved ones, and there are lots of them who've lost people in Gaza, that they also ought to speak. I mean, if the platform of the party says that, in fact, there's equal worth to Israeli and Palestinian lives, then it ought to be demonstrated. And I think that Kamala Harris has reflected that in her speaking, and it's just a question of doing it. That is not the same as the folks outside who are making demands that are unreasonable. The uncommitted people have taken a very sober approach to negotiating with the party, and negotiations are taking place to meet some of the concerns, and I hope it happens. I do hope it happens, because we want Kamala to win. We don't want Donald Trump back. What we do want is a responsiveness to the concerns that people have raised, so that there will be an opportunity to mobilize the community behind her. But the folks who are demonstrating in New York, the folks demonstrating in Chicago,
fair enough,
don't represent the majority of they don't represent the uncommitted movement to begin with, but they don't represent the majority of those concerned about Palestinian rights.
Fair enough. What happens, though, if and when the discussions, the negotiations don't go as well as many in the uncommitted delegates hope that they may? Then what happens?
I think we're going to get. I think we're going to get someplace. I think we're going to get movement on this. I think the party is making a real effort. The uncommitted people are making a real effort, and I hope that we can come to closure on some important concessions, some important compromises that make people feel comfortable all the way around. I hope. Nothing's certain.
And if they don't,
but I think that if they don't, I think people will be disappointed, and you're going to lose some support. But no, the uncommitted people in the convention are not going to do disruption. That's not what they're doing. They did not engage in a political campaign to win 700,000 votes across the country to trash things inside the convention. That's not the game they play. These are folks who are solid political organizers who think deeply and care a lot about the future of the Democratic Party in the country. They are not people who are going to, do what they can to disrupt things. That's not the approach they've taken.
All right, we shall see. Prominent Lebanese American, James Zogby. Thank you very much for coming on the program. As always, appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your screen. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.